Clause 3 Changes Overview. Before we jump into the design and qualification changes in AWS D1.1 2025, let's start with Clause 3, Terms and Definitions. At first glance, a glossary doesn't seem very exciting, but there's a reason AWS added these definitions. They introduce terminology that's used throughout the rest of the 2025 code. Most of these additions fall into three categories: new structural design terminology, new filler metal terminology, and new inspection and fabrication terminology. By the end of this section, you'll understand the vocabulary that appears later in the code. Key takeaway: Clause 3 sets the language for the rest of the 2025 edition. New design terminology. The first group of new definitions deals with structural design. AWS now defines three important terms: allowable strength, design strength, and available strength. If you're a welding engineer working with structural calculations, you've probably seen these terms before. Allowable strength design, or ASD, uses the nominal strength divided by a safety factor. Load and resistance factor design, or LRFD, uses the nominal strength multiplied by a resistance factor. If you're studying for the CWI exam or working as a welding inspector, don't panic. You're generally not expected to perform LRFD calculations. The important part is understanding the terminology, because you'll see these terms in specifications, engineering drawings, and later sections of AWS D1.1. Key takeaway: know the terminology, not necessarily the math. Matching, overmatching, and undermatching filler metals. This is one of the more important additions in the 2025 edition. AWS now formally defines matching, overmatching, and undermatching filler metals. A matching filler metal provides the required strength for the base metal group. Overmatching filler metals exceed that strength, while undermatching filler metals provide less strength than the matching classification. These definitions aren't just academic. They're used extensively later in clauses 4, 5, and 6 when discussing filler metal selection and WPS qualification. If you understand these definitions now, those later sections will make much more sense. Key takeaway: these definitions become building blocks for the rest of the code. New inspection terminology. Clause 3 also introduces a couple of new non-destructive examination terms. A false indication is exactly what it sounds like. During magnetic particle testing or penetrant testing, you may see something that looks like a discontinuity but is actually caused by surface roughness, magnetic permeability changes, excess penetrant, poor cleaning, or some other non-defect condition. AWS also formally defines the word indication for MT and PT. An indication is simply the visible response produced by the inspection process. Not every indication is a rejectable discontinuity. That's an important distinction inspectors need to understand. Key takeaway: an indication is not automatically a defect. New fabrication terminology. The remaining additions are primarily fabrication terms. AWS added definitions for contouring fillet welds, holdback, flash and arc stud welding, and supplemental filler metal used in submerged arc welding. Most fabricators already use these concepts in practice. The difference is that the 2025 edition now defines them explicitly, so everyone is using the same terminology throughout the code. Key takeaway: these definitions improve consistency throughout fabrication requirements. What should you remember? If there's one thing I'd like you to remember from Clause 3, it's this: don't try to memorize the glossary. Instead, understand why these definitions were added. The design terms support the new LRFD provisions. The filler metal definitions support revised WPS and qualification requirements. The inspection definitions support updated MT and PT language. And the fabrication terms support changes you'll see later in the code. Think of Clause 3 as laying the foundation for everything else that changed in the 2025 edition. Once you understand the vocabulary, the revisions in later clauses become much easier to follow. Key takeaway: the new definitions aren't isolated. They prepare you for the major technical revisions that follow.